Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nikon Creators Hour. I'm your host, Mike Corrado. I've been with Nikon for over 35 years and been taking pictures for over 40, and we're doing these great interviews with some epic photographers. And with us right now, we have Anna Boyiazis from California. Anna, how are you doing?
Thank you, Mike, for your warm welcome and invitation to present my work. Thank you, Nikon, for this opportunity to speak about what I do. I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I can't thank you enough for putting together a collection of images to talk about, and we'll get to those images. But before we get started, I want to ask, how are you doing? How's your family, people around you during this pandemic?
I hit the pause button earlier than we did collectively. Last fall, as I was preparing my return to Africa, my dad was diagnosed with lymphoma, prompting me to hit the pause button abroad. He popped back to life as spring and COVID were approaching. As soon as he shared that he'd be fine if I returned to Africa, the pandemic struck. This time, the pandemic, plus the time leading up to it, has provided the opportunity to dive into projects that I've long wanted to do, editioning prints from my long-term project, Finding Freedom in the Water, and securing gallery representation, which I'm super excited about. So shipping prints to Monroe Gallery of Photography for exhibition at the inaugural Paris Photo New York almost 5 months ago was my last hurrah before tucking in safely at home. Since then, I've taken refuge in writing, diving deeply into my ideas, expanding upon them, assigning value to them. And while I can't wait for the world to open up again and for us to move freely through it, anticipation is a powerful force ripe with inspiration. This time has also afforded the opportunity to create a project in collaboration with family and friends. And with this comes the precious gift of understanding the nuances of our language 100%. This is a luxury that I don't always have. I recently received a call from one of my favorite collaborators in Uganda, Eddie. I met Eddie when he was 8 and now he's 22. After spending months studying via radio, Eddie told me that he's feeling fidgety. Me too, Eddie, me too. Are you feeling fidgety, Mike?
I'm feeling a little fidgety. You know, I think you go through these moments, and I went through it too. This would be a busy time for me for shooting. So when you don't pick up the camera for the things, rock concerts and Ronald McDonald House and baseball games and, you know, just the general things you love to go photograph, you go through a bit of withdrawal. And so I think, like everybody else, like you, I've taken this time, you know, within the reset to do things, to catch up on things, to look at old photos, look at albums that, you know, or folders of images. I'd never touched the images, you know, except for grabbing that one good one that I thought was good. So,
sure.
But I'm doing good. And again, to give us your time, I think is so precious. To tell us your story is so precious. And I always love to give the viewers some insight as to who it is we're talking about. So if you wouldn't mind, Anna, can you talk a little bit about, you know, what got you started in photography? Think about that first time you picked up a camera. For me, it was a fascination in a darkroom with my dad watching pictures come to life in chemistry. But how did you get started, and how did you know it was going to be your career?
As a documentary photographer, I aim to elicit compassion and bring our shared humanity to the fore. I view and experience this work as an act of empathy, going inside my subjects' lives and entering their physical and emotional worlds has transformed and refined my ability to see. With genuine concern for the well-being of the individuals I photograph, my focus remains committed to capturing moments that establish connection, soften delineation, and illuminate darkness with a sensitivity that only an artist can reveal given sufficient time. Photography is an extension of my heart. I remember being led into our junior high auditorium for an assembly where black and white films were our initiation to the Holocaust. Stunned, I wondered why nobody had told us about this sooner, and more importantly, why hadn't anyone done anything to stop it? I've never been able to get those images out of my head. Trained as a designer, I navigate from the point of view that rules exist to be broken, to transcend the literal, to take the thing out of the thing, to resist spoon feeding the viewer, to tell stories that only I can. My transition from design to photography was one that I was committed to make before I became a designer, My drive to be out in the world, engaging with and documenting it while using my voice for advocacy has a very strong pull. It's what I feel most alive doing. When my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, her first bout, I was hit with the reality that life is short, that we only get one chance at it. I've since directed all my creative energy toward photography, to connect with distress and photograph it in such a way that it increases viewer capacity to love, to support positive change, to inspire audience engagement, to challenge the viewer to question everything, the cultural and political context in which photographs are made, the cultural and political context that inform viewer perception. And before photography, before design, I was trained as a gymnast. At university, we began each day of training in darkness, lying flat on our backs, eyes closed, visualizing what we aimed to achieve. At 15, I learned that what we could see with our mind, we could do. It's informed my practice today. I envisioned and wrote about my long-term project, Finding Freedom in the Water, for months before I began photographing. I had a strong sense of what I wanted to achieve with the project conceptually, immersing myself in the visual. The reality that I've only experienced in my head stirs me in the best way. Bearing witness to and photographing the transition from fear to peace, an act of emancipation, has exceeded my expectations. I'm beyond thankful that viewers internationally have connected to the photographs in the spirit in which they were intended. In my time between projects, and now as projects overlap, I find myself repeating this process, manifesting ideas that feel distant yet personal, writing about them, wondering if my ideas will resonate with anyone besides me. Most importantly, I feel as though I am their guardian, that I've been entrusted to carry them through to fruition. I photograph from the perspective that I can fail, that nobody ever has to see what I'm doing, that it's perfectly okay if nobody else considers what I'm doing important or interesting. Ultimately, I'm doing it for me because I have to. The process opens me up and turns me inside out. Photography is feeling like I'm exactly where I need to be, that nothing could be more intuitive. Photography has taught me to trust my gut and quiet my mind, listen to my heart. It's welcomed me home. My thoughts are in Malibu in the early 70s, when horses were free to run through the surf and tide pools were teeming with starfish. When my brother and I were little, our mom, an extraordinary friend and a passionate teacher of biology and marine biology, would encourage us to bring her everything we could find on the beach so that we could discuss its kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. When she was diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time, I made the choice to care for her as she would have for me. Though I didn't know how long we'd get to spend together, I was committed to encouraging her through her final days. Why am I sharing this? It's helped me to let go, to accept delays as we're experiencing now as nature intends them. In the past 2 years, I've reflected repeatedly on how this delay in caring for my mom, which I would do all over again if given the opportunity, put me in the perfect position time-wise to begin finding freedom in the water, as if carefully orchestrated or perhaps maternally choreographed. The moments I photographed didn't happen 2 years before, a year before, or even a day before, nor will they ever happen again.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, and certainly thank you for getting personal, about the health of your parents. Cancer is no stranger for me, and a lot of the work that I do at the Ronald McDonald House and cancer patients, it's not an easy road. I watch what the parents and the families go through, so thank you for sharing that. Certainly, the work you do does tell that story, so it is a part of your soul, and you see that in every image. And I'm not just saying that because there are some people that will tell stories with pictures, but there are some people that they'll actually bring you into the story and make you see things that you just would not see normally. So I find that amazing. I mean, and your pictures are out there. I mean, World Press, National Geographic, you've gotten all kinds of grants, a Getty Reportage grant, a Nikon grant, as a matter of fact, too. So it's nice that you've had those avenues to share these photos. And the project that you're working on, Finding Freedom in Water, it's just so powerful. The images are so powerful. So I can't wait to get to some of those. Along the way, were there any mentors that you had, anybody that inspired you, to try different things in photography or to push the envelope in the work that you do?
Definitely. Sarah Terry, Elizabeth Christ, Ashley Gilbertson, Jimmy Colton.
Jimmy, Uncle Jimmy.
Uncle Jimmy. I could go on and on, but I feel like I'm going to leave people out the more names I say.
No, that's okay. And listen, this is not the first time Uncle Jimmy's been brought up. So Jimmy Colton, I love you. That is one of the monikers that.
Wait, I have to say some more. See now,
sure, go ahead.
I'm going to hurt feelings if I don't say.
No, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings today.
Christopher Morris, Joao Silva, Brent Sturton. Yeah.
Beautiful. No, good. Again, that to me, mentors are so important. And I think, once we do start showing the pictures, everybody will be inspired. So thank you for, letting us in on where you've come from. We'll definitely be able to tell more stories. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to open up this program and we're going to start with this first image of yours. And, as we talked about, Anna, just feel free to just talk about the image, where you took it, what happened along the way. Eventually, we'll get to maybe some of the lens focal length choices that you made, in the type of shooting that you do, so we can educate a little bit. But you take it away from here. Talk about this picture.
This photograph is from my long-term project, Finding Freedom in the Water, which bears witness to women and girls in Zanzibar learning to swim for the very first time. When you teach a man to swim, he swims. When you teach a woman to swim, she teaches her whole community. We gain a passionate teacher committed to empowering girls to be safe in the water, a role model who advocates a girl's right not to drown, a leader willing to buck traditional power structure in order to contribute to society outside the sphere of her home, embracing values learned in the water, courage, delayed gratification, goal setting. She shifts fear and trepidation to confidence and joy. She learns that with the right attitude, her world and influence upon it expands. Daily life in the Zanzibar archipelago centers around the sea, yet the majority of girls who inhabit the islands never acquire even the most fundamental swimming skills. Conservative Islamic culture and the absence of modest swimwear have compelled community leaders to discourage girls from swimming until now. In recent years, grassroots organizations are making it possible for local women and girls to get into the water, not only teaching them swimming skills, but aquatic safety and drowning prevention techniques. Students are empowered to teach others, creating a sustainable cycle, and are often provided full-length swimsuits so that they can enter the water without compromising their cultural and religious beliefs. This is a picture of swim instructor City. City is 24 years old and is helping a young girl float in the Indian Ocean off of Nungwi, Zanzibar.
Beautiful, beautiful image. Talk to me a little bit about, though, how you're approaching this now. You're in Zanzibar.
I'm in Zanzibar.
You're clearly in the water.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How do you approach a picture like this? Because it looks so delicate to me. It looks like a very delicate situation. You're in the water. You're submerged in the water. And talk a little bit about, maybe the focal length lens you would choose for something like this.
Yes. For this, I was using a D700 and a 2870, which is now discontinued. But I love that lens. You
mentioned that before to me. I have the 28 that 2870 2.8. That was a beefy lens that we've had, and certainly the 2470 became the popular de facto for the wide angle.
Sure.
Are you connecting with the people when you're taking these pictures? They're obviously aware that you're there because you've got a camera up. Have you spoken to them and just said, be who you are, just do your thing? I mean, how are you dealing with them around you?
Oh, I am not asking them to do anything special for me, that's for sure. I am there to capture what's going on naturally.
So
this is all natural light. It was actually raining, which was beautiful. I had been working with City for weeks, so she was used to me being around and could ignore me. The young girl in the photo is, I mean, in the water, floating or learning to float, is preoccupied. So concentrating on what she's doing.
So that brings up the notion, and I think this is so important for anybody in any level of photography or any genre of photography, the relationship. If you developed a relationship with this young lady, you know, you're there with her for weeks. You establish a good, solid relationship. Do you stay in touch with these people that you photograph?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I had been in the water with her for weeks. I had been in Zanzibar much longer, gaining access to the story.
Do you meet her family? Do you meet other people around her that are very close to her and continue to just strengthen that relationship? I just find that so important.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful, beautiful picture to start off with, and thank you for sharing it. As we roll on, again, I can't express enough how the impact of your images just, it hits you right away. Whether there's repetition or it's a simple picture, you know, of someone holding somebody in the water. Talk about this. Where are you here, and what's going on? It seems so amazing.
This is one of my first days in the water with my camera. I spent a week in the water without my camera, and I had seen this exercise without the jugs and almost didn't take this picture because I'm against plastic in the ocean. But there was a voice in my head saying not to edit with the camera, edit later, thankfully.
Beautiful.
So yeah, there's more to the story here that I think is important. While the wearing of full-length swimsuits may be seen as subjugation, donning one in order to learn a vital life skill, which has long been and would otherwise be forbidden, is an important first step toward emancipation. Education, whether it be in or out of the water, serves as a springboard, providing women and girls the empowerment and tools with which to claim their rights and challenge existing barriers. These 4 girls are from Kajini Primary School, and they're embracing empty tomato sauce containers for extra buoyancy as they learn to float, swim, and perform rescues.
Incredible. That's just, it's so funny because I've never seen anything like this before. And, you know, again, just a part of the story in finding freedom in the water. How long have you been working on this? Is this something you're still working on now, this story? Is this somewhat of a never-ending story?
Yes, that's all I can say. I'm taking it to different locations internationally.
Gotcha. Understood. Very, very powerful. And here, part of the same project. What's going on here?
The rate of drowning on the African continent is the highest in the world, and still many community leaders have yet to warm up to the idea of women and girls learning to swim. The lessons challenge a patriarchal system that discourages women from pursuing things other than domestic tasks. It's this tension of the freedom one feels in and underwater, juxtaposed with the limitations imposed upon Zanzibari women, that is at the heart of this series. In this photograph is a young woman learning to float in the Indian Ocean, again off of Nugui, Zanzibar.
And how important is this to them? I mean, did they express to you, you know, the importance of all this and this learning?
Well, they were at first ridiculed for participating in something like this. So yeah, it took a few very confident individuals to first break the ground for the others to participate. And
are you still working with just that de facto 2870? Is that going to be the main lens that you go after when you're doing this type of story?
I've switched it up to 35.
Gotcha. So you use different lenses. Are you a fixed or zoom? I mean, you use both, and it just depends on the circumstance.
You know, I was a zoom until I was challenged to do fixed, and now zoom feels a little cumbersome when you're used to fixed, and when you're used to move. I'm used to moving my feet now. I'm used to moving my whole body around.
I find that fascinating because you're right. I mean, when you are limited to one focal length, you actually approach things differently, I think.
Completely
Um,
differently.
yeah, and
Angle wise.
definitely a discipline, beautiful discipline. Is this water warm? I feel like I want to jump into this body of water right now. What's the conditions like that you're working in?
The water is 84 degrees.
Oh, that's so
The
nice.
air is 84 degrees. The water out of the tap is 84 degrees. Everything is 84 degrees, and that happens to be my optimal temperature. So yeah, it's perfect.
Oh, beautiful. Again, just so well done. Just really just impactful. And I think of all the images you sent, this is probably, again, I hate to say a favorite, but the power in this image is endless to me. So talk about what's happening here and what were you thinking when you took this picture?
This was the easiest picture to take because I was following Chema. Yeah, I remember showing a friend who is an architect all my selects, and I wasn't really thinking of even including this one because it was such an easy get, which we probably all do. And I could tell by the way she responded to it that I needed to include it, thankfully. Yeah, and trust your friends and trust your family. The majority of my photographs were made in waist to neck deep water in the Indian Ocean. And while photographing, I had three things going through my mind. I was hyper conscious of where I was positioning myself in relation to both the equatorial sun and the water that was reflecting it. I was trying my best to keep my camera dry, free from the elements, salt, sand, water. And I was constantly reminding myself not to dive into the water because I'm super comfortable in the ocean and was concerned that I'd forget that I had my camera in my hands.
You can do that once. You can take that dive once. You may get lucky and take some pictures. I have washed memory cards digitally, and they work perfectly fine. The SSD technology, but yeah, that jump in the water with the camera may not work. But no, it's so powerful. Do me a favor though. This is a big story, right? You're committed, and your passion, is certainly within the story. You can see it within the photos. For those people looking in, like maybe those people you may have met at Eddie Adams, where you were, may have been teaching, or you were able to talk with the student. What advice would you give to somebody when you're working on a story like this? Because it's going to take a lot out of you, I think. And how do you approach it over the long haul?
Well, I think what's really important to know about this story is that gaining access to it was not easy. I emailed the organization from afar to explain the collaboration that I envisioned and received no response. And thankfully I was in Perpignan, and Brenton Sturton said, 21 days trapped. Don't let the waiting get to your head. So with this encouragement to stay clear-headed when experiencing delays, I purchased a ticket from Perpignan to Zanzibar. And while in Zanzibar, I did my best to remain calm, focused, and persistent. After I introduced myself in person, the Panjay Project began a month-long process of reaching out to the community, the village elders, the parents, the leaders, to make sure that everyone was comfortable with their girls being photographed. After access was secured, I spent 2 weeks teaching the swim instructors English, and an additional week in the water, like I mentioned, without my camera. So while visitors have been shunned from photographing participants in the water, this personal investment provided exclusive access to an underreported, highly preventable, critical global public health challenge that has never been photographed.
That's very interesting, and I would think that there's rejection in some of the ideas that you have, and there's, I guess, a bit of, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? So I can imagine that it's not an easy road to get there. And I would think that patience, as you said, and just kind of clearing your mind and persistence is what keeps something like this going. So, so congratulations for that. And, it's funny you mentioned how this one was the simple one and you didn't even know or think about putting it in. But I've always found that some of the simpler pictures for me people are just blown away with, and they don't mean as much to me, but the ones I work so hard on that I kind of get dismissed a little bit quicker than some of the other photos. It's amazing how people see different things. And I find it to be an extraordinary image because of its simplicity. And even if it was easy for you to capture, it says so much. It really, really does. So let's roll on. Let's continue on. Talk about this picture. What's going on here, Anna?
This is South Sudanese unaccompanied minor James at a refugee camp near Khartoum, Sudan. James is a member of the Dinka tribe, and he traveled by foot to the Republic of the Sudan, fleeing armed conflict. His mom and dad are still in South Sudan. He's pictured here after being at the camp for 3 months. He receives food and shelter and learns the Quran. And here he is in his bed, the top bunk, which he shares with 1 or 2 other boys every night.
How do you feel in this environment? How do you, I've been to Vietnam, watched kids on houseboats and, poor parts of the world. How do you feel in this environment as you walk in to something that's so different than where we live?
The organization that I was with that day asked me the same thing. Are you okay? After I finished photographing him, they could probably see on my face that it was with very mixed emotion. This beautiful scene of him peacefully resting, but knowing what he's resting from, and contemplating his road ahead, which is not going to be easy.
And you just keep pushing through that. You push through the emotion because you realize you got a story to tell, right? And I find that I found that if you don't emotionally connect with the subjects or the situation, sometimes it's noticeable in photos. So to dig in. So how do you overcome that? You just ride it out?
Again, those that I was with, I think they understood that I had fallen in love with this kid. And the rest of the day when we saw him in the mosque praying or wherever he was, they would point him out. There's your boy, there's your boy.
And so you're going to follow him around for a day or several days, taking pictures of him, or just in this environment?
Just in this environment. I wish that I could have had access much, much longer. Definitely.
Do you ever push for that kind of thing? I mean, obviously, you're working here and you're given certain access to this type of photo. Do you ever try to push a little bit to get to where you want?
Oh, absolutely.
And, are you working with fixers while you're over there, or just you're working with the locals that you made contact with to get there?
I've never worked with a fixer before.
Interesting. I hear that term all the time from a lot of people that go into a lot of countries. So doing that solo, that's pretty brave.
I see the benefits of doing so, though. I wouldn't mind having the budget to do it.
But you're kind of running on your own. So this is another self-assignment for you?
Yes.
And would you say a fair majority of what you're doing is self-assignments, or are you running through agencies and organizations?
The majority are self-financed and self-initiated.
That's outstanding, because it goes back to when you opened up and talked about this passion for telling stories. It's certainly there, and you can certainly see that in the photos. Let's move on to this image. This is a bit different, very interesting.
Very different. So this is an assignment. ESPN asked me to photograph mixed martial artist TJ Dillashaw, who we see in the foreground.
I've seen him once. I've seen him fight. Yeah.
And I photographed him in California and New York as he cut weight for the 2019 World Flyweight Championship. This picture of TJ and his training partner, Juan Archuleta, was made as they were training with a medicine ball outside of their coach, Sam Calavita's Yorba Linda, California home. And just a shout out that Juan in the background doesn't get as much acclaim as TJ, but deserves it. He is such a good friend to TJ and a beautiful person.
Hmm. I'm fascinated by the sport itself and certainly the physical training. It's
Mhm.
interesting. It's like they're just standing in front of a house, or are they jogging with these balls? Are they, what are they doing here?
They are throwing it up. They're doing all,
Yeah,
I can't even tell you. They're doing all kinds of things with this ball. They were
amazing.
holding it above their head and dropping it in back of them and then having to turn around quickly and pick it up again. I guess that's core.
Hmm. When you look at him, I mean, I think in the world of MMA or UFC, this is a celebrity. How do
Mhm.
you approach a celebrity different than maybe some of your other subjects? How are you connecting with them, and how are you connecting with him first? And how does that conversation go? I'm going to come photograph you.
Mm, Maybe I have a different relationship to celebrity, having grown up in Los Angeles, where I don't give a.
Rat's butt. We can say that, on Zoom,
Yeah,
which is kind
I
of
don't
important. I think,
care.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think because a lot of people get caught up in that. And one thing, a good friend of mine is a psychologist and a therapist, and I had worked with celebrities quite a bit. And he had always
Mhm.
given me this advice: just always remember that you know something they don't, that you're bringing something to the table that they don't. So it just kind of neutralizes everything. But
Right.
people get wide-eyed at rock stars. They get wide-eyed at celebrities and certainly championship fighters like this. But it's
Sure,
nice to
but
see him in this environment, in this element.
they're not immune to struggles as well.
Hmm. Well, as I've heard in so many other interviews, and one I just recently did, is they're just people, right?
Totally.
We were talking of photographers like Gordon Parks and Izzy, and they're just people. But I was interviewing Mark Edward Harris, and he had taken some really great portraits of those photographers. So very, very interesting. And so this is still that same story. How many
This is
days did you
this,
spend?
um, I think 10 days over the course of 3 weeks.
Hmm.
Um, this was in New York, obviously, the day before weigh-in. He was toggling between workouts, media appearances, and promotional obligations. He was still weighing 140 pounds and needed to get it down to 125 in less than 24 hours.
And how is he with you with the camera? He seems to be relaxed. You seem to just be doing your thing. Certainly, like we
Mhm.
had mentioned before, you're not asking anybody to do anything.
Sure.
Um, were there ever points in times where he was like, please don't take this picture, or that you felt like you needed to back off? Or did you just kind of roll with it all? And I guess you covered the whole thing. Did you cover the fight as well?
I did not cover the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody with a super long lens and yeah. That kind of photographer did the fight.
Mm-hmm.
That was not me.
But
Um,
talk about that a
I'm
little bit
much more
about that experience.
comfortable in intimate settings. This limo was packed with his wife, his child, his manager, his doctor, his training partner. There were a lot of people here in this. And he invited me to come along with them this day because this was not really part of the assignment. Nothing was going on that was specifically about weight cutting. Um, but I think that being around him for these 3 weeks led to an important moment later on this night because I was there to photograph what happened at midnight of this day. And that was when he was wearing plastic, I don't even know what to call it, plastic training suits and going on the treadmill and being in the sauna and steam bath in order to shed the water weight. And that's what I was there to photograph. So when he was taking off all his clothes and there was a pause, it was because there was a woman in the room and I was the woman. And I had to remind them that I was there to make these photographs and it was important for me to be there. And so clothes were dropped, he was naked, and it didn't matter because I had already built a relationship and built a trust with not only him, but his whole team.
Got it. And that's so important. I think that word trust, when you
Mm-hmm.
bring a camera in those types of environments, is that they need to see you as the storyteller that you are,
Mm-hmm.
the documentary photographer that you are. But
Mm-hmm.
I love it's a moment, he's in a moment. and certainly reflecting or relaxing or in just a place where he's not bombarded with a lot of people on the outside. He's intimate with his family. Did you talk with his family at all, his kids and the wife, or do you just, again, just kind of keep your distance and do your thing?
I tried to give them attention because I know that they are in the shadow during opportunities like this. And so I tried to also photograph them and make them feel included, so that everybody was included. I mean, there's other pictures with the manager and the doctor and everybody.
And, you know, I always like to shout out during, you know, the interviews that I'm going to spell this out. It's ANNABOYIAZIS for those of you that want to check out Anna's work on Instagram. And certainly her website is phenomenal. So again, I feel restricted telling you, you know, we only usually work with about 8 pictures or so, but you know, there's so many more pictures to these stories that people can see, and hopefully we'll check out your work after this. But again, just another beautiful moment. Let me stop sharing here.
Sure.
And bring you back full screen. I can't thank you enough for the time you've given us here, Anna. And it's so great to meet you virtually through Zoom. You know, we were on a phone call before, and you know, we talked about doing this interview. So thank you for giving us your time. I would really, if you wouldn't mind, for anyone trying to get into journalism or documentary photography, or, you know, would there be any advice that you could share for them? I know when you talk about things like, you know, persistence and patience and whatnot, and but what would you tell anybody out there, you know, that's looking to do what you do?
I don't know where my ideas come from, and I'm often shocked because I don't feel like I'm going out there to get them. They come to me. And my advice is to trust that process. Trust the strange things that are coming to mind that you think you might enjoy photographing. Yeah, go with it, because they're coming to us for a reason.
That makes sense. So again, thank you for taking the time to cull down this big body of work that you've done. Everybody out there, please check Anna's work out. It's amazing, and great stories. Continued success to you. I can't wait to see more of what you're about to do. Are you moving on anytime soon to start traveling again, or we're all just kind of in this sort of world of the unknown, and what would be next? If there was something you could tell us about, what would you want to do next?
Well, now I feel like I've opened up a can of worms here too by starting a project locally. So I'm okay either way. I could work in Europe. I have an idea there. I can work back in Africa. I have an idea there. And I can continue working on what I've started here in LA. I mean, you tell me how long this is going to last. I don't know. I've had family make bets on when quarantining will end. My bet was the longest.
Yeah, it's funny because in the midst of all this, we actually did a Zoom Easter dinner together.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I'll say it out loud, and they'll never watch this, but I don't care. They were misfits when it came to using the computer in Zoom, and they were so enthralled by seeing themselves. I was like, please, no more of these family, dinners. It lasted twice, and we spent an hour just staring at each other. So I understand. Yeah. Well, we are going to make it out of this. And again, those of you tuning in, I hope you're inspired by Anna's work and telling stories, and don't stop short. I think that's great advice. Even if you think something's crazy, follow it. You know, you follow the things you love, you follow the work you're doing. And I think a big bit of advice out of this is, like you said, get in the water, but don't bring the camera. You know, when I first started working at the Ronald McDonald House, I went to 2 people you probably know, Deanne Fitzmaurice and Amy Vitale. And I said, how do I do this? I didn't grow up as a journalist. And now I'm covering things journalistically here. And they both gave me such great advice. And Deanne said it right away. Don't even bring the camera in. Go play Legos. Go play with the toys and the games and get to know these people first. And it's true. It slowly built this relationship. And then I think the word that Amy used with me is the one that I will take forever, is dignify them. Make them look dignified. because I asked, when do you put the camera down? How far do you know when to go? How far is the pain that they're going through? So all great, great advice. But again, I hope you remain safe out there. I can't thank you enough for sharing,
Thank you.
some of those personal, intimate details about your mom and dad. I think that's it's tough. I know what it's like to go through that. So thank you for that. Any of you tuning in, check out this interview completely if you started watching it in the middle. Great work from Anna. Great stories, great backstories. Check out NikonUSA.com/creators hour to check out some of the other interviews we've done. We want you guys to be inspired with every one of these interviews we're doing. Get out there and take pictures, and please share them with the world, share them with us, post them, and share that passion that you may have for telling stories. For Nikon, I'm Mike Corrado. Thank you for joining us on the Creators Hour. Everybody out there, take care and be safe. We'll see you soon.